Good afternoon. I'm the Reverend Dr. Vienna Cobb Anderson, the former rector of St. Margaret's Episcopal Church in Washington, D.C., and I served at St. Paul's from 1996 to 2001, returned as a parishioner 6 years ago. I'm currently involved in the ministry of Comforting Stitches and the monthly Monday night prayer vigil for our city, state, and country. On behalf of the congregation, it is my pleasure to welcome you to St. Paul's Episcopal Church in downtown Richmond, and especially to welcome you to the John Shelby Spong Lenten Speaker Series. As you silence your cell phones, I call your attention to the collection plate at the back of the church and in the hallway to your right at the front of the church. Any monies collected will help to offset the expenses associated with this series. Let's open with a prayer. O God, author of creation, we thank you for the gift of inspiration, for opening our eyes to see new possibilities, for enriching our minds with visions never dreamed, for guiding us to trust the unconscious view, for sounds to tickle and to delight, for teaching our hearts to receive the unexpected gift. For these and for the many wonders you have wrought within the secret places of our souls, we thank you, O God of endless creation. Amen.
Amen.
The Speaker Series and Lenten program goes back over 100 years, but this year is newly branded in honor of Bishop Spong, acknowledging his legacy, spirit, and witness as a fearless voice for progressive Christian thought. Jack, as he was known to us, was St. Paul's rector from 1969 to 1976, and post-retirement as Bishop of Newark, came back to us as a parishioner in these pews. A popular national lecturer, sometimes controversial biblical scholar, and author of more than a dozen books, Jack was a champion of women clergy, LGBTQ inclusion, racial justice, and interfaith dialogue. He argued against biblical literalism, believing the heart of Jesus' teaching was about being transformed and becoming whole. He argued for us to live fully and to love wastefully. The Speaker Series, however, does not look back so much as it hopes to explore fresh expressions of a progressive theology and engage diverse modern expressions of faith and spiritual practice. Perhaps we will deepen our faith and reignite a passion for shared dialogue as we build the beloved community. Today's speaker is Ellen Spong, daughter of Bishop Spong. She came to St. Paul's in 1960 when her dad was named rector and has been here ever since. When I was asked to introduce Ellen, I asked her what she'd like for me to say. She responded, "I honestly don't know what to tell you." It should be short and not a recitation of resume details about me. So I asked her to tell me about quirks she and her dad shared. She said that she and Jack had a passion for sports, especially baseball and the New York Yankees. Jack also ordered clothes for his 3 daughters in styles he thought suited each of them, and that he was especially proud of a pair of suede boots that he found for her with butterflies embroidered on them. You'll notice she's wearing them today. They arrived 2 days after he died, and Ellen has walked many a mile in them since that day. Ellen says that every Saturday was candy day, as candy was not allowed at other times during the week. Dad took my sisters and me downtown in a red wagon each Saturday for shopping at the dime store. She also wondered as a child why other families went away for the weekends, since they never did. She describes her youth as exciting, yet frightening years punctuated by racial and civil unrest, threats from the KKK during desegregation, the Cuban Missile Crisis, JFK's assassination, and Vietnam. Her father was deeply engaged in these issues, and Ellen and her sisters were highly attuned to what was happening in the world around them. This was a time which was foundational in her relationship with her father and the establishment of her own values and interests. If you are meeting Ellen for the first time today, you will find that she is very like her father in wit, wisdom, and compassion. In her 30 years of helping municipal and nonprofit organizations invest prudently and govern with integrity, she has been as passionate in creating change and confronting injustice as her father was in his ministry. Today, Ellen will speak about her personal history as a daughter making sense of a father who was sometimes larger than life. Here are our rector, Charlie Dupree, and Ellen Spong.
Oh, well, it looks like we need to begin with the keys, please, of a Lexus, a gray Lexus 8806 SB.
In the sub-basement.
In the sub-basement. If anyone owns that car, can you please see Carter? Thank you. All right. Well, Ellen, welcome. Welcome to all of you. Can we see the boots?
But of course.
Really cute. I love a good boot.
Yes, this is quite a different perspective from one I usually have on a weekly basis.
Yeah. Well, welcome up here. I want to begin just by kind of setting a little bit of the context. You're our fifth speaker, and we started out with Stephanie Spellers, and then we moved to Gene Robinson, and then we had Cole Arthur Riley, and back to Gene Robinson. So as we launch this series and try to kind of bring the messages of your father into this space, into this new time, into this new era, and you've been sitting there watching them, how's it felt? What's it been like? What have you been thinking?
Well, I think it's been tremendously exciting. I will have to say, when you plan something like this, you never quite know what it's going to turn out with or play. But I think Dad would have been totally thrilled by this. I think he would have been honored and just really touched by Gene Robinson's presence here and the comments and the life that they shared. I think he would be thrilled that Stephanie Spellers found that she had a place in the church. I think his mind would have been bent by Cole Arthur Riley, and I think they would have had an incredible exploratory discussion if they had the opportunity.
Yeah.
And then there's me.
And here you are.
But it is as colorful a series and a perspective as I think he was and is at presence as a man and a presence in this congregation.
Well, we're going to talk about that more today. In fact, that's really, I think, an appropriate way to land the plane, at least for this season, and to bring the series to a close, which is to hear about him, to really hear about what is it like to be a family, to have him as a part of the family, and all of the different chapters, and the evolution of him, the evolution of you, how all of those things come together. First of all, I want to recognize you're not the only child, right? I want to hear about your family context.
Well, I have a sister, Kathy, who I believe is here today. Kathy?
Yay!
She will correct anything that I get wrong and anything I say along the way. But there'll be a license. I have a sister, Jacqueline, who says she will watch this later, who is on the West Coast. We were quite a threesome, if you can imagine. And what I'll say is we, at different stages, I mean, everybody in my family, incidentally, was born in North Carolina except me. I was born in Virginia. My dad was in seminary. But as we grew up, and as our father evolved, we each had a little bit different takes on what that experience was like. And so we remember different things. Yeah.
I'd like to start off in just kind of as a family unit. When did you begin to realize that your dad had a different job than perhaps other people in the community?
Later than you might think, Vienna alluded to the fact that, we didn't understand when other people went away for the weekend, because that just didn't happen. I was constantly perplexed while people went away on vacation during Lent.
Right.
But it's
Spring break. What's that?
What is that? Spring break. But it's an interesting life. I didn't feel that different. My father was in a profession. I knew other clergy, particularly in Tarboro, where we were all a close-knit community. All our friends were preachers' kids, not all of them. But it just seemed that he was part of a profession just like everybody else. So, outside of the usual preacher's kids jokes you get periodically,
Yeah.
it was different, but I think ours was really different for other reasons.
Yeah. Well, we'll hear later about how that became more and more obvious as you all grew up. So let's go back to Tarboro. Just so you'll know, that's where I'm from. I was born in Tarboro also. So this is really cool, kind of full circle.
Total karma.
Moment. Yeah, totally karma. I have heard about Jack Spong ever since I was a kid, because when he served at Calvary, he would go and supply in some of the smaller churches and that's where I attended, one of the smaller churches. But my father would always talk about him because he was a tall man, your father. And he was like, that tall preacher. That's what my daddy would say. But so I know Tarboro.
That's probably one of the nicer things people have said.
That's right. It started out soft. So let's go back to Tarboro. Tell me the story about how Vienna alluded to your dad's love of sports. I hear that he was a broadcaster for the Tarboro High School football games. How did that come to be?
I wish I could answer that question, because I'm not really sure how your rector gets to moonlight as the local sportscaster for the high school football game, which he did several times. But back to the sports, I told Charlie, family, profession, sports, in that order. He loved sports, basketball, baseball. As a matter of fact, in Tarboro, there is a parish hall called Memorial Hall, I think it's called something else now, that he really helped complete its construction very early, about 1960. Had a gymnasium, kitchen, classrooms, all kinds of things. It really was a community center. It was a center of life. Tarboro is a very small town, as you know.
And then it was very, very segregated.
And very segregated.
So this was an attempt to bring the community together,
To bring
right?
the community together. So what does a Memorial Hall need? It needs a basketball league. So he established a basketball league and teams. There was a boys' basketball league to start with. Teams were the Bishops, the Deacons, and the Celtics.
Okay.
Okay? But it was a community. People would come to these games. I think he coached and refereed, or I don't think at the same time, obviously, but it was a fascinating experience. And then he became enlightened. The girls complained. They did not have a basketball league. So the basketball league, incidentally, was named the Holy Hoopsters. The girls complained, wanted to have their own. They got one, the Holy Hoop Skirts. Their names were the Queens, the Angels, and the Jezebels. Great fun.
Ouch.
Or they wore red. They wore red. But people would come to these games, and there were crowds, and it was a community type thing, and it was a lot of fun. And it was a side of him that not everybody would see in that terms of that passion. But believe me, he was organized. He organized the T-shirts. He organized the games. There was a tournament, everything.
Yeah. And
that became just a tremendous outlet. That may have led to the sportscasting thing. We would go to football games, and he was up in the press box, and my sisters and we were running around the field trying to be very nice, but we just, it's a little town. You had a great time. And so he was the voice of the Tarboro Tigers. And it was, there's my dad in the press box. The press box tonight, the pulpit tomorrow. It was up there. But it was very interesting. It got to be very human. There was an injury, a very serious injury that occurred with one of the players on Tarboro's football team. His name was Big Daddy Do. And Big Daddy Do was, I think that it was a leg injury or something, but the long and the short of it is the ambulance had to come take him, pick him up, take him to the hospital. Big Daddy Do is also a member of Calvary Parish, so Dad had to sign off from the radio station and go right into the ambulance with the player to the hospital. So it was, you never knew what was going to happen. It was always exciting. It was always interesting.
Yeah,
and,
the different hats that clergy people get to wear, and it's coming to me now that their kids also have to wear different hats. I mean, you're the preacher's kid. You couldn't screw up.
I did.
Right.
And it usually I got a lecture on it.
Yeah.
Too.
When did you begin to feel that pinch?
It probably started in Tarboro, where there was a lot going on at the time. So we were under a little bit of a microscope, and kids are kids. You act up in Sunday school and do things you're probably not supposed to do. But it was never bad. It was just mischief. But yeah, there was always a spotlight on
different expectations.
Different expectations, and I never was really quite sure what those were. I think I felt the expectations probably as I grew up, probably more so in Richmond when his public profile really became even more pronounced.
Yeah.
I'd get a lot of comments.
So from Tarboro, he went to
Lynchburg,
and then from Lynchburg came to St. Paul's.
Right.
So let's fast forward a little bit. I also understand that you and your family would receive threats. There were calls. There were accusations. There were KKK.
That was in Tarboro.
Is that Tarboro? Tell us about some of those memories.
It's interesting. My father was a public figure. I thought even more so from a social change, justice perspective that I became aware of even before, I understood theologically where he was going. But he was declared public enemy #1 by the KKK in Edgecombe County. And as a result, we would get threatening phone calls, morning, noon, and night, that threats to the effect of somebody's going to come along and rape or attack your daughters on the way to school. I always wondered why we got walked to school a lot, and I think I was not aware of it. But they were truly frightening. And one night, Dad was always working a little bit late on something, and he came running into the house and turned on every single light in the house, because if you had the lights on, the KKK would not come to your house. And we're always getting threats, either his life, on our lives, or to burn crosses in our yard.
Wow.
All the time. And it was pretty fierce.
But that must mean then that he had a reputation for being a lot more progressive than probably 90% of the people in Edgecombe County. So the word was out.
The word was out.
Early on in his ministry that he was a forward thinker.
Correct.
Wow.
Very much so.
And did you know that? Or was it just part of the water that you drank?
I was aware of that. And I always found it interesting because he was also the pastor at St. Luke's, which was the black church. So it was across the street from Calvary Church, which was the white church. And I never did understand, why are we wasting two buildings when it's just people? So, I mean, that's the naivety of a child, but I loved being that naive because it didn't make any sense to me. And so I found it to be somewhat shocking that what seemed to be people are people.
Right, yeah.
Created that kind of hatred and that kind of passion and negativity in a community that's small and throughout that area.
Do you remember kids talking to you about your dad, your playground kids talking about your dad?
They really thought he was funny.
Okay.
Because he had quite the personality of, he taught him the chewing gum song, which I'm not going to share with you this morning, but he really did interact well with children. So they saw him as a personality. I think it's the parents had some issues, and sometimes you would be confronted with something. But
Yeah.
he was a very popular personality, but publicly around in that area, there was just a lot of hatred.
Wow. Let's fast forward to St. Paul's. He came here. They were flying the Confederate flag out front. What did you hear about that?
Well, I came to Richmond. I said, is the Civil War still going on? It was very interesting, and I still look back and think, all right, he is 38 years old when we moved to Richmond, and he became rector of this church, and he was greeted by the Confederate flag adjacent to the Diocese of Virginia flag on the front of the church. What did they really think was going to happen? So I've always been fascinated, and I've always been so really impressed with St. Paul's as truly being a forward-thinking church or open to those possibilities. Took the flag down pretty quickly.
Can you dig a little deeper into that? Did he ever call you and it's like, hey, can you believe what this church is doing? And I'm going to do this. What?
He did say, that can't stand. That is a symbol of the past. It's a symbol of hatred. It's a symbol of how we treated, a group of people. He was very cagey from a political standpoint in terms of trying to understand, because there are a lot of people in this church whose family members were part of the Civil War, and that was family as well as the cultural aspects of it. So I think he made a compromise, and he said he would allow the Confederate flag to stand by Robert E. Lee's pew on the Sunday that was near Robert E. Lee's birthday. And his sermon, he decided to preach that day on Martin Luther King.
That is, that's why. That's the give and take, I think.
I was aware of that, and I was going like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yes.
God. Did you ever say, Dad, calm it down?
No.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have worked anyway.
Yeah.
But he just was he's just so thoughtful. I still think it is, because the Spirit is so alive in terms of what he did and how he planned to do it. Now, there's no question he didn't shy from public attention, but he used that for what I always feel like was for good, to advance things forward.
Okay. So from St. Paul's, that's when he began to feel the call to the episcopacy, to be a bishop. Is that right? Is that the timeline?
I don't know that he ever felt the call. I think they called him. He was extremely happy here.
Here at St. Paul's. At
St. Paul's. And the foundation, it's interesting, the adult forum that he did, it used to just pack, Scott Hall. Was just such a vital part. He started that in Lynchburg, and I think one of the things he really wanted to do was build and to develop that here. So that became really a centerpiece for so much of his work. It was the foundation of all of his writing. It was the start of what was then known as the dialogue, the Jewish-Christian dialogue, for those of you who have read about it or might not have been here, that really opened up some interfaith conversations, the likes of which no one had ever seen. And that was it was not so much daring, but it was very forward thinking.
Yeah.
It had never been done.
So you think that Newark probably called him and invited him to participate in that process? Because it is, it's a process. It takes a back and forth.
Yes.
You at that point you were in college?
In college, yeah.
College when he began to migrate north. Do you remember conversations with him about that call and about why he felt like he should say yes?
Yes, I think if you agree to go through the process, you're going to accept the outcome unless you withdraw for some reason. I think he did it with great trepidation because St. Paul's was just the center of colorful dialogue, of life, of what I call it was this brilliant tapestry of a congregation. And I don't think there is any church that he would have wanted to serve any more than he did St. Paul's. And I think this was such a productive time. He started to publish his first book here. He engaged in a lot of really progressive themes of fair housing that he worked on with Fletcher Lowe, for instance. There were so many things that were happening, and it was still a pretty volatile time. There was the incident that, we've mentioned when there was Judge Marriage, who was a federal district court judge here, and made on a busing decision that created so much controversy. But it was interesting, nobody spoke up about a very inappropriate comment that was made by a city councilman who called for the euthanasia of then Governor Holton. And it was just silence. No public outcry, no editorial. And so finally, at the end of his adult forum in February, I think it's 1972, he said, "This is inappropriate language. This people is very sick, very evil." And I thought, well, this is going to light something. But I was totally surprised with what happened, which is the whole crowd, applauded. The news covered it. It was in Time magazine. Jeff McNelly, who was a cartoonist, penned a cartoon. So I think some of those things were just prior to 72. He was elected in 76. So I think the seeds of what to do next were there.
Right.
But
yeah.
I don't think he sought it. I think it sought him.
Yeah. And as you say, it was just such a time. I think about that phrase, when God's time has ripened. There are certain things that are called forth in certain contexts and places and times, and he was in the midst of that. Mm-hmm. Bishop Robinson spoke last week very lovingly and affectionately of your father, and he did mention an ego, which Bishop Robinson also claims to have, and
I would agree with that.
Clergy can have that. Talk about the ego. How do you make sense of that for him?
You have to have ego to take those kinds of risks. You have to have enough confidence to be able to put ideas and to challenge people out there. If you don't, you're not going to be very successful at doing what you're doing. And Dad, he had an ego about things, but he also, I look at the actions that taken, and I know I've mentioned this to you, but people would always say, he was so early to this. And I'm thinking, what does early mean?
Yeah, for you, early was 6 years old.
Early was 6 years old or 6 in the morning, but it was a term that God used for saying we're not ready for something like that yet. And so when Bishop Robinson and I talked about it, it was, timing can be awkward, the way and manner in which things could be abrupt. But change that's really earth-moving, that's monumental, is never pretty, really.
Yeah.
It always happens in a way, but if we don't do it, if we don't crash the barrier, if we don't do it, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So you've got to have ego, you've got to have forward think, you've got to have a substance to be able to take those risks and to look at the risk of not taking those actions.
Sure.
What's worse?
Can you talk about a time when Bishop Spong was discouraged? When he really felt like, I don't know that I can do this?
There were always setbacks because there was a lot. I mean, he was controversial. He said as he got older, he got less controversial because the world came around to the way he was thinking. But yes, there were times when things, the church punished him for the ordination of Robert Williams. Again, might not have been the best person, but what is remembered from that is breaking the doors open. Mm-hmm. for people to be who are God's children, to be treated with dignity and respect just like anyone else, and to be able to have the access to professional opportunities, not because of their gender or who they love or who they are. But yeah, there was pain, and there was pain for us, and you would see that. It wasn't, it wasn't always, but it's strength, the inner strength and the courage that he had to do the things that he did that changed not just the church, but changed, I think, made an impact on how we view so many things in this day and time. It was very public. Bishop Robinson talked about that, but his congregation was who was going to listen, and a lot of people did.
Yeah. Do you think having 3 daughters affected him and his opinions? And do you think he changed his mind because of the 3 of you?
I think he was sensitive to issues. He was also raised by a mother who had an 8th grade education. His father died when he was 12. So he had some sensitivity to the way women were treated. But yeah, we had more votes.
Okay.
We had more votes. And there were times when we would go at things a little bit differently, or we would talk about it. But I think it raised his awareness. Mm-hmm. He had high expectations. I don't know what it would have been like if he'd had 3 sons instead of 3 daughters. But there's some dynamics there.
You've mentioned the word in conversations with me, discipline. Mm-hmm. He was a very disciplined person as a writer. Bishop Robinson alluded to that as well. Do you remember the time when something clicked over in him and he wanted to go public with how he was thinking in the form of books and publications?
I think it happened in Richmond. He finally, from the lectures, he decided that, let's push this out. I'm getting, and there was a response. People were very hungry for what was the opportunity to question, to ask. He would bring speakers into the Lenten series that would push the thinking out. So, fiercely disciplined, very detail-oriented, fierce on execution, every detail. And that was the way I think that he came across, that was the opportunity that was there. And he was going to take it. And I think he should have, and I'm proud of him for doing it.
Yeah. So it's making me think about the stroke that happened to him. Can you talk a little bit about when that happened in his life, and how did he respond?
Well, for someone who was as energetic and a student every day, read every day, there was quite a shock and a setback. It happened in 2016. He was 85 years old. He had just celebrated his 60th anniversary of his ordination and his 40th anniversary of being consecrated bishop. It's an interesting time. It was also an election year. He fought just like he fought discipline. He did challenge his physical therapist some on the way he wanted to do his exercises, but things like that. But he was determined that he was going to recover from that, and in fact did. In fact, the book Unbelievable had been finished, and we were editing, and I think my sister, that was one of the few books that we really did have a hand in editing and reading, that type of thing. But he was not to be denied.
It came out around the time of before his stroke.
It came out after his stroke. It was in final publication at the time of his stroke, and it had to be was published. Now, what's interesting is it's titled Unbelievable, and that was an election year. Katie Tur published a book called Unbelievable at the same time, and there was a debate as to whether or not it was going to keep the title or not prior to it being published. And they decided the topics were fairly different, so they kept that. But yeah, that book was actually released after his stroke, and in fact, he came back to St. Paul's and lectured from that book in 2019, I believe.
Nice. Well, I would imagine that a stroke is hard for every human being. we have his treadmill downstairs.
Yes. Did I tell you he wore out 2 treadmills that were under warranty?
No.
Yeah.
So back to the sports then.
Back to the sports
back
and
to the discipline
exercise
and exercise.
every day, yeah.
Wow. It's making me think about, I don't think people want clergy who aren't human beings. People want clergy, want companions who understand what it's like to fall, to succeed, to be kicked down and to be helped up again. Do you think that people saw your dad as somehow bulletproof?
No. I think people here, and I'm looking at you all now who know him, knew that was not the case.
Yeah.
But
there was vulnerability.
There was vulnerability. There were times, you just think about the life that there was when people are constantly threatening you. People spit on him. I've told you, we'd get hate mail all the time because just for reasons that were just didn't make any sense. We got a letter once, I've mentioned to you, where it was a woman who said, with views like yours, I am sure that all your daughters are either adulterers, prostitutes, or lesbians. That's a holy trinity for you right there.
Yes.
I couldn't figure out.
There's an icon in that somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Man, it makes me think, did you ever get mad and think, or any of your sisters, why are you doing this? Can't you just do something different?
Well, there were some times where you would question, not sort of the why, but he was a very energetic, and he was always in a hurry. And I only said it's about the fact that his father died at quite a young age. When he was young, I was born when he was 23 years old. So he was in a hurry to go places and to do things. And he was curious, questioning, always peeling back the layers of the onion, constantly challenging his mind, constantly challenging the world, around him in terms of, and the church. Mm-hmm. I think for good reason, and to make it be different. But no, not really. It was who, it is who he is.
Right. It was your life.
Yeah, and that was our life, and that was his. It was perpetual motion, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I want to get to some of the things that you've brought that you want to read. You often refer to his mantra. Mm-hmm. Live fully, love wastefully, be all that you can be. And you said he embodied that. And we chose that theme very intentionally for this series. So I wonder if you might read something from one of his books that you brought. I don't know that I had ever heard of this one.
Well, I am going to, and it's a very short reading. This is a book called Christ Power. It was published when he was here.
Christ Power.
Christ Power in Richmond. And it is the publication, it is his sermons, where portions of the sermons that he preached at St. Paul's were distilled into free verse. And he did have a way with words. This is a distillation of something that I just think and I've used this book many, many times. I have to read the inscription for you because I just looked at it today.
She literally just saw this inscription.
And for Ellen, no greater pleasure can come to my life beyond the joy of being your father. With love, Dad. November 1, 1975.
Whoa.
So,
All Saints Day.
Yes. It is, as I said, it has been a wild tapestry and a wonderful one.
And you still have a lot of his stuff, right?
Oh, just ask Gus how much stuff I have of his. Why it is still around in various things. But you find all these treasures periodically. I found in his Bible a folded up envelope with a paper clip on it that had never been opened. So I opened it. It was a daisy from the altar from his last Sunday at Calvary Parish in 1965.
Wow.
It was still fresh.
Nice.
Really interesting. All right, this is just a brief reading from Christ's Power. Our deepest desire is not found in earthly symbols of power or success. It is not found in the great moments of our history, and certainly not in the status we seek to acquire. Our deepest desire is found only in love, powerful, affirming, life-giving love. That love which always and only comes as a gift.
Amen. So, would you call him a loving man?
Oh, absolutely. He didn't love wastefully for nothing, and he did. When you look at the mantra, that is the way he lived his life. He was a sportscaster. He started a basketball league. He did all kinds of things with us as children. He had great friendships. Stephen Peppel shared with me last Sunday the fact that when he was in St. Paul's, he used to call all the children on their birthdays and wish them happy birthday.
Nice.
Stephen also shared with me that his son said he wasn't in the mood to talk to Reverend Spong on his birthday, and that he would talk to him some other time.
I'll get back to you.
You want to talk to Reverend Spong? No. Are you sure he wants to wish you a happy birthday? I'm not in the mood. But you know, those colorful influences, that comes with the territory. And if nothing ever like happened, you don't have stories to tell.
Yeah, wow. I can't get away without asking to tell us about him being on Oprah Winfrey.
Oh gosh.
Do you remember that?
I remember.
Did you meet her? Did you go?
No, I did not. I
Okay.
did not meet Oprah, and it was on the Bill Maher, Politically Incorrect. And it's seeing your father on television in his purple vest with stage makeup on is really really something else. Now, what I remember is he's on Bill O'Reilly many times, and what I learned very quickly is even though Dad could be very, he presents well, he answers questions well, but Bill O'Reilly interrupts everybody. And so finally Dad got that frustrated and just told Bill O'Reilly that he said, "You're just nothing but Rush Limbaugh with perfume." So that created a moment of silence on that program that probably never happened sort of since then. But that was interesting. Those clips, those are still around. You can find him on Bill Maher, and he did an interview with Leslie Stahl in 60 Minutes. So it was a very public life. I would get phone calls and said, "What is your father doing on Bill O'Reilly?" And I said, "I don't know. I didn't know he was going to do that." Sometimes we wouldn't know until after. the fact.
You mentioned you didn't always know what was going on, and you couldn't always know what was going on.
No.
And so information would come, out of nowhere, and you're like, oh, I had no idea.
It's not dissimilar from another story that shared that Dad says he always had to read the paper the next day just to read what he said, because it was not usually the same.
Yeah.
In terms of how it was reported. But I think that was true, and throughout his life, there were a lot of sound bites, and there were a lot of people who made a name for themselves by being contrary to him.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of the press wants you to read the article, so
Sure.
there's a lot of sensationalism of a lot of the things that were said, and they would get taken out of context periodically, and that was kind of a frustrating part of it. And I would get some comments about that.
Yeah.
He said, "What? No, he did not," that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as you said, if you don't have the confidence, if you don't have the ideas, and if you don't have the support, you're not going to move ahead and make any sort of change happen. But Lord knows, He made some change happen.
Yes, he did. But
Yeah.
I certainly think there are a lot of people that benefit in this life. And what is interesting about today's discussion is there are so many layers to who he is, who he was. But make no mistake, he pursued them all with equal organization and skill. Ministry, even his shopping, he was somewhat of a fashionista with regard to what he would purchase for us. So
Yeah.
he sent me a cartoon once that I think says it all. It says, anything worth doing is worth doing well. And that was the way that he lived in terms of pursuit of fun, of joy, of study,
Yeah.
digging into sorrowful and defeated times.
Well, thank you for being here. Thanks for being open with all of this. I realize that for you and your family, his death was not that long ago.
No.
And so this probably pulls at a lot of strings for all of you. So thank you for being willing to be a part of this.
Thank you.
For
There's
offering
also a
these
lot
stories.
of joy in
Yeah.
this. It's not just, again, what I think about this series and about forward-looking. This is forward-looking. This is the spirit of that was so just vigorous and vital within this moving forward. So to me, this is a joyful part of it. He would have liked it too.
Good.
This would have done well on
Well,
the
let's
ego.
do it next year too.
Charlie, we will do it. Yes, definitely. And there was a lot of work that went into this. I give you a tremendous amount of credit for organizing this. And there are a lot of people who I'm looking at right now who have a big piece of this.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to transition us then to that. And then I'm going to have you close us with one of Bishop Spong's signature blessings. I just want to say thank you to all of you for coming. These past 5 weeks. It's a great joy. It is a great amount of work, but we're suited for this. And I think Bishop Spong's echo is still very much loud around the corners of these halls. Thank you to the Spong design team, those who helped pull this together. Thanks to Shelf Life Books, who has been here, and they are going to be here today in Scott Hall. For your book perusing pleasure. And if you would all help by clapping really loudly right now for the people who have provided the lunches and the hospitality and the cheese souffle and the chicken salad. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And would you please close us? Would we like to stand for our blessing?
God, send us anywhere you would have us go. Only go there with us. Place upon us any burden you desire. Only stand by us to sustain us. Break any tie that binds us, except the tie that binds us to you. And may the blessing of God Almighty, Creator, Redeemer, Holy Spirit, be with you this day and always. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you all. Have a beautiful week. Our services of Holy Week and Easter are on the flip side of your insert. Have a beautiful day. Yay.